Hello, everybody, and welcome to the annual Communities of Color series. My name is Amanda Collins. I use she, hers pronouns, and I am a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. I'm also a lead intern at the American Indian Resource Center. Today, I will be facilitating this event along with my fellow intern, Areli.
Hi, everyone. My name is Areli Hernandez, and I'm an intern for the American Indian Resource Center. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am Maya Mam from Guatemala and Otomi from Mexico. And Amanda and I will soon be joining the UCSC alumni family as we'll both be graduating in spring. So yeah.
So the AIRC is dedicated to supporting the needs of American Indian students at UCSC, and it is one of 6 resource centers on campus. The AIRC is also home to the People of Color Sustainability Collective. Throughout the year, we host speakers, workshops, and presentations that raise awareness about issues that pertain to Indigenous people.
We will begin our event with the land acknowledgement. UCSC is located on the unceded territory of the Awaswa-speaking Yupi tribe. The Amamutsin tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. The Communities of Color series, 3Cs, provides a brave space for new and continuing students and alumni of color to engage in honest dialogues and relationship building opportunities. Students develop career strategies, make connections with alumni, and leave equipped with knowledge that will help them navigate professions they are interested in pursuing after graduation. It is common for students to develop lasting relationships and discover job and internship leads at this event.
At today's workshop, What's Up with Where You Work, we will discuss the differences between working for a nonprofit, foundation, a state entity, or the federal government. The 4 alumni with us today will share their experiences, help explain the differences, and provide insight on which might work best for your future career.
So we're going to start off by sharing some brief explanations of these main work environments. A nonprofit organization, NPO, also known as a non-business entity, not-for-profit organization, or nonprofit institution, is a legal entity organized and operated for a collective, public, or social benefit. The work these organizations is to further a religious, scientific, charitable, educational, literary, public safety, or cruelty prevention mission or area of work.
Next, we have state entities. State entities are agencies and departments over which the state governor has executive authority. All public benefit corporations, public authorities, boards, and bodies, or any houses of any branch of the state government falls under this category. All UC and CSU employees, state police and Caltrans workers, for instance, are all considered state employees as they contribute to a public service that is overseen by the state.
So what is a foundation? A foundation is a category of nonprofit organization that provides funding and support for other charitable organizations through grants, but may also engage directly in charitable activities. Foundations include public charitable foundations such as community foundations or private foundations, which are typically endowed by an individual or a family. A private foundation is an independent legal entity set up for solely charitable purposes, and Unlike a public charity, which relies on public fundraising to support its activities, the funding for a private foundation typically comes from a single individual, a family, or a corporation. So we have, for example, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is private. It comes from that family's endowments and grants. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation is public. So the money that they make is through donations and charities. So yeah.
And then last, we have federal positions. Working for the federal government means you work for the United States of America or any bureau, department, instrumentality, or other agency of federal government. Politicians and legislative staff, civil servants, and members of the armed forces are all considered federal employees. Another example would be the US Postal Service, the FBI, or the CIA.
All right, now that we've established the different types of organizations that you can work for, we'll hear from folks with firsthand experience working in these organizations. Our guest speakers today are Renee Howell, Ashley de la Rosa, Dr. Melissa K. Nelson, and Judith Camacho. Renee Howell, she, they identifies as a queer mixed Ogapa Washo Quapaw woman. While at UC Santa Cruz, Renee served as an intern at the American Indian Resource Center and as a member of SANAI, Student Alliance of North American Indians. Renee graduated from UC Santa Cruz in June of 2019 with a BS in Molecular and Cellular Developmental Biology. In February of 2019, Renee joined Teach for America and was assigned to work in South Dakota, a Native American Initiative region. As a Corp member, Renee has spent the last 2 years working on the Standing Rock Reservation teaching high school science. She is currently the science department head at her school and a Leadership for Educational Equity School Leadership Fellow. Ashley de la Rosa is a first-generation Latina who completed her BA in Sociology at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She began her career interning at Omni Family Health researching programs. Through that experience, her passion for addressing disparities in the Central Valley grew. She is now working as the Education Policy Director for the Dolores Huerta Foundation, where she advocates for education justice through community organizing and policy advocacy. Ashley works closely with the community, providing strategies and tools to help them achieve educational equity. Ashley provides community trainings based on educational rights, budget processes, and racial healing. Ashley wants to empower and elevate the voices of those most affected by the school to prison pipeline and racial discrimination in schools.
Melissa K. Nelson, PhD, is a professor of Indigenous Sustainability in the School of Sustainability at Arizona State University. Nelson is an Indigenous ecologist, writer, editor, media maker, and scholar activist. Before joining the School of Sustainability, she served as the professor of American Indian Studies at San Francisco State University from 2002 to 2020, specializing in Indigenous, Environmental, and California Indian Studies. She is a transdisciplinary and community-based scholar dedicated to Indigenous rights and sustainability, biocultural heritage and environmental justice, intercultural solidarity, and the renewal and celebration of community health and cultural arts. Nelson actively advocates for Indigenous peoples' rights and sustainable lifeways in higher education, nonprofits, and philanthropy, and is particularly passionate about Indigenous food sovereignty at local, regional, and global levels. From 1993 to 2020, Melissa served as Executive Director, CEO of the Cultural Conservancy, growing their organization as a global native-led land-based organization with numerous local, regional, and international programs and partners. Dr. Nelson is Anishinaabe, a proud member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians, Cree Métis, and Norwegian. And Judith Camacho has an undergraduate degree in mathematics from UCSC, graduate coursework in public health from Johns Hopkins, and a master's degree in ontological coaching from the Universidad San Sebastián in Santiago, Chile. Judith has over 25 years experience working with nonprofit and government organizations. For the past year and a half, she has been a co-executive director at Life Lab, a nonprofit located on the UCSC farm promoting garden-based science education. Judith supported nonprofits in Latin America and the US, as well as offered life and executive coaching for nonprofit leaders. Her professional trajectory began as a program assistant at SACNAS, Society for the Advancement of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science, whose mission is to achieve true diversity in science nationwide.
Thank you all for being here today. We'd like to ask you all a few questions about your work, and please feel free to unmute and give us your answer. And the first question is, tell us one thing you wish you knew about the workplace before you started a new job after completing college. And feel free to unmute yourselves and
the question is in the chat as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll dive in to get us started. Thank you so much for organizing this wonderful panel. What an honor to be on with all these fabulous alum and meet these future alum of UC Santa Cruz. So thank you for your good work. I would say one thing is that you can really create your own work. And that I always thought you had to fit kind of into some kind of position that was already established and fit within the criteria of an organization or business. But really the work field honors and recognizes leadership, and that you can really create your own positions. And it may take some time, it may take some hard work and diligence and patience, but if you're passionate about doing something, you can do it and really carve your own niche, so to speak, and make your own path for your own profession. Businesses, nonprofits, universities appreciate that kind of bold leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. This is Judith Camacho, and I'll just add to what Melissa was mentioning, and that is, I'll give you a clear example of how I had the wonderful opportunity of being able to create my niche. So I was studying mathematics at UCSC, really not certain where that would take me, and feeling very much disconnected from my community. I was born in Mexico and came at a very young age. And my parents are both farm workers. And I just didn't have enough examples of how math could connect to anything, especially that would serve the community. And I was very fortunate that at that time, SACNA, Society for Advancement of Chicanos, Latinos and Native Americans in Science, had a small little place. It's a nonprofit that grew very big, but that was actually at UCSC. And I had this opportunity to actually participate as a student assistant and as a program assistant. And before I knew it, the person who hired me left. And here I was with a nonprofit learning how to actually work within a nonprofit. And as the years went by, I became the executive director of SACNAS, and then had an opportunity to go to Washington, DC and come back and serve a second term at SACNAS as an executive director. But that was a clear example of what Melissa was just talking about, that I had no clue what nonprofits were. I had no clue how I could do it, but I had a lot of help and I had a lot of will. And so that's something that I wish I would have known that was possible, but I did it. And I hope that you guys can find that kind of opportunity where you can really begin to explore that leadership potential.
I can go ahead and share. So I just want to echo what both amazing alumni have already stated. I think for me, one of the things also is to be able to have patience. I know it was difficult for me to find the position that I am now, and thankfully it's been a growing and learning experience. And so I've been able to, take it as I go, but along with a lot of mentors. So really not being afraid to reach out to anyone you've had a connection with, even if you did lose a connection with as an undergrad. You never know who they can lead you to and really provide that support and mentorship you need. I know it's a little difficult for me coming back home because I was so used to being up in Santa Cruz and interning up in the Bay Area. And so when I came back to the Central Valley, Kern more specifically, it was difficult and I felt very disconnected to my community. So I did test out the waters, and thankfully I was able to find what I am now happy to be a part of, but it did take some time and just a lot of self-reflection. So never being afraid of feeling stuck or, impatient, but reminding yourself that, you truly are amazing, and you need to continue to work towards what you want to have, and just ask for help when it's needed.
I guess that leaves me to finish us off. First of all, I want to say, it is such an honor to be here with such amazing Indigenous powerhouses and all ladies. Yes. Anyway, I think my piece of advice, I grew up in California and I'm in South Dakota right now, completely middle of nowhere kind of thing. And I think my biggest piece of advice is don't be afraid to take a chance. Because I don't have relatives or anything out here. So coming to South Dakota specifically to teach Indigenous youth science was not something I intended to do. I didn't plan to go into education, but I felt the draw to stay in the community, and I love science. So my logical connection between community and science was teaching. So don't be afraid to take that chance, even if it seems wild, even if it seems out of reach. Y'all are capable. If I can make it through teaching in the middle of a pandemic, we can do anything here, y'all. We're doing it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yes, thank you so much for all of your responses. I mean, Renee, yes, you were, when you were amazing, you were doing all this in a pandemic, and just thank you for coming out and giving this advice. Kind of the common theme I'm hearing so far is this idea of not really knowing what path is set out for you. So kind of making it your own and really listening and being guided by mentors, and seeing where your passions and where your gifts start to lead you along. So just thank you for giving that hope, because I think it is easy to get into that trap of I need to do this step and this step and this step, and I need to know exactly what I want to do now. So it's just really reassuring just to hear such diversity in your journeys, and how you're still able to come to a place where you all seem comfortable with your position. So thank you. So kind of jumping off of that into our next question, what do you like best about the work you're doing now? Too many things, huh?
I can begin. One of the most beautiful things that for me is to actually feel like the many different experiences that I've had are coming together. The science, the nonprofit work, the opportunity to think about the world and the planet through garden-based education, and also to come to the place that I began to open myself up to the world, which is UCSC. I just think it's beautiful how sometimes we just never know where our life will take us, but sometimes it goes in spirals, and sometimes it goes in these beautiful paths. And so for me, one of the most joyful things is to be back on campus in a whole different area, but in a place that I hadn't even discovered. I had never stepped on the UCSC farm when I was a student. And so to discover a new place in a school that I thought I knew is quite exciting, and to see the possibilities of connecting the many different fields and experiences that I've had to think about education for children, and how to open up spaces for learning and including everybody in that process.
maybe I can go next. I really love the people that I work with. A lot of my work is with community members and youth. And then we also have like the different sectors of coalition and just everyone working together into a purpose. And it's all a big part of it. It's all intersecting, you know, civic education, civic engagement education, LGBTQ rights, environmental rights, and workers' rights. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is really for the bigger and broader sector. And I really love just the place I work in because it's really learning. I'm learning a lot. Unfortunately, I was barely able to start, and then like the pandemic happened, and so we really like shut everything down. So a lot of the work that I've been doing has been virtually. But even then, like you can see the resilience that our community members have, especially in South and rural Kern, that, you know, is just always forgotten and feeds most of the nation. So I'm just so happy to be able to work with them and learn from them every time that we have a training or a workshop.
Beautiful. Thank you. I can go next. Boy, that's a tough question. I'm so lucky to love my work. I love that I keep learning every day. I just love to keep learning new things about the land, about different tribal backgrounds, about seeds, about farming, common thread here, about nonprofit fundraising. There's just endless things to keep learning. So I love that even my work is like another university that I keep learning. That's probably the most important thing. But I also love, for me, that each day is different. I like a lot of different types of stimulation. And so meetings and in the field and on the ground and with elders and with kids. And yeah, the diversity of experiences for me is also really great. Thank you.
I feel like I'm echoing a little bit about what Judith said, but as an educator, it's always the students. Cliche, I know, it's not the pay, shocker. It's the kids. I get to work with all Indigenous students, and they bring to the table amazing gifts that I don't know, I just never anticipated as an educator. The like depth of their knowledge about things that I had no clue about that they are teaching me constantly. Like, y'all can't see it, but I have a little shrine of pictures of my students on my desk right now, and they are the reason that I get up and do the work that I do every day. Just those moments where they have like ahas, you know, like breakthrough moments when they get proud of themselves. They're like, oh my God, I know stoichiometry. And I'm like, yes, you know stoichiometry. Just, it seems so minute, but it is such a powerful thing when these students realize that like science is accessible to them, and being able to help facilitate that is just the most powerful thing that I've ever experienced. So absolutely 100%. Easiest question, the students.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. It's nice to hear that the workforce is something that we could be passionate about and work with in community with one another, and not some kind of stereotypical cubicle 9-to-5 job. So that's nice to hear. And for our next question, what is the most important thing you think college students of color should know about entering a workplace after graduation? And the question's in the chat as well, if you want to look over it again. I know it was long.
I think this could change probably every day for me. That's why I'm taking time. But right now, what's speaking really true to me is that as a person of color, or the global majority, I need allies. I need people who are going to resonate with me, where I don't have to explain everything, where I can feel as a whole person. And I have realized that in every space that I've been able to work at, I have needed people both on a day-to-day, but then even maybe on the outside, just have allies. Look for mentors and people who can support you on your learning journey, both at work and personally, because sometimes the questions that we're pondering sometimes are so big, and feeling alone for me at any time has been just sometimes very, very hard. But as soon as I realized, oh, I can call Dr. Clifton Poudry, I can call Dr. The wonderful people who have helped me and who have guided me and who are there ready to listen to me. There's a wonderful gardener up on campus. Her name is June. Today, literally, I had to call her and say, June, I just need to talk things through. And she'll just listen to me. So what I can just share with you is find the support that you need.
I could add to that. I would just say thank you so much for that, Hudit. So important. Find your allies, your mentors, your support team, because you will need them. Because there's moments of sheer frustration and pain and sorrow sometimes with people's ignorance. And even though we all have different layers of ignorance, I also find that many people today, at least, want to have conversations about race and justice and equity, and people want a safe space for that and are often very awkward about it. But just know that people who we may not think of our allies could be, if there's the right context for a good conversation, an honest conversation about it. And people may stick their foot in their mouth, we may stick our foot in our mouth, or there may be moments of we have to get into that same old role of a little educating. It's so frustrating. But I think especially now, given the racial justice conversations happening at a national level, people want to talk about it. And folks may need to do work on their own first before we feel safe to have some of those conversations. But just to bring it up so it's not that awkward elephant in the room. Just put it on a table at a staff meeting or at a lunch meeting. Just say, we should find a time, a safe space to really get clear about what we want to talk about justice or race or our heritage and what that means to us. So there's many creative ways to do it when you're ready or if you feel it's needed. Yeah.
I think I'll jump in now just so I don't keep a trend of going last every time. I think my piece of advice for our students of color that are moving into the workforce, those of you about to graduate, exciting, is just to know that your presence in whatever space you end up in is invaluable. I think a lot of the time, like especially for our people of color, we tend to second guess ourselves and we have that imposter syndrome, especially in higher education. And just know that somewhere there's going to be a young person that's going to see you in taking up space wherever you are, and they're going to realize that that is a place that they could end up being. Y'all are paving the way for the next generation, and to honor that and to live into it. Take up all the space.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think the most important thing is to bring your full self and not be afraid of anything that you are, that you bring, because, like Renee was saying, it's going to be a role model to someone and you may not even know it.
Yeah, it's just so beautifully put from all of you. Like, I am just amazed. I think you put it like so beautifully, just finding your allies and the theme of taking up space, because I think it is true, like as students of color, especially in spaces that have been occupied by predominantly white groups or middle classes, it can be very intimidating coming from whichever background you are, and like not knowing how to navigate things, or maybe not seeing anyone who looks like you or shares that background, you know, feeling like you have to constantly prove your place there. And I think it makes it so, and I think like you were saying, Renee, just that idea that our presence and our voice is invaluable, because in a sense we are paving the way for students to come through these careers, and we could be those mentors someday. And you know, I hope after this event is over, like everyone can look to you as mentors as well and come to you for advice, because I'm sure some people in the audience will be needing that guidance and that wisdom going into the professional careers. So thank you. So here's our next question. So have you, as women of color, faced any adversity in the professional world, and how did you overcome it? It's a bit of a personal question, so take the time you need.
Maybe I can go ahead and start us off. So actually, our organization, it's just been very difficult, especially right now during COVID. So we really work with our community, especially the rural parts of Kern, Tulare, and Fresno, which is the Central Valley. And in Kern, you know, we really fight for educational justice, which has been proven to show, you know, data has shown that historically in Kern County, a lot of our Black and Brown students have been pushed into the school to prison pipeline. So we had a call to action to defund the Kern High School Police, who has over a $4 million budget to allocate resources for mental health services and just different resources for our students that are really needed, especially during this time in the pandemic. As a woman of color, it was difficult because a lot of our leadership in Kern County is white males. And so actually recently we had an issue where this leadership pulled a contract with a coalition because of our decision to call to defund the police. So this contract was $1 million contract that was going to be able to help and serve our communities, that we were going to do COVID outreach and education to ensure that, you know, these folks that have been showing high rates of COVID infections would get the knowledge and resources that they need. So it's been very difficult to navigate this space because, you know, we are trying to break down this systemic racism and these roots of history where, you know, we shouldn't be speaking up. So it was a very difficult time. I felt very targeted. You know, I know personally, I felt targeted, as well as like other folks in the organizations and the coalitions that we are a part of, just because, you know, we are fighting for justice, and just like in the blink of an eye, that just backfired on us. So it did question a lot of the work that I was doing, and it questioned my leadership and just ability to be able to help folks. And so it goes back to like bringing your full self and being able to really get these mentors and talk things out and realize that, you know, the call to action that we have is not something difficult or bad. We're fighting for justice. And so really reminding yourself to be grounded and stay true to what you are passionate about. So even though it's difficult at times, and a lot of the adversities that we face are because of systemic racism and these infrastructures that have been built, that have not been built for us. but reminding yourself of your support, being able to talk to folks and go to your mentors to really stay grounded and continue the fight, because like, you know, it continues, la lucha sigue. And like the biggest mentor that I have right now, Dolores, says like, you know, si se puede, like you can do it, we can do it. And so that's really what one of the biggest adversities that I faced so far, and just the questioning of myself. But just again, and now I'm just rambling, but yeah, just being able to go back to your true self and just remember that you're here for the long haul. And so sometimes it does take a step, you need to take a step back to really stop the sprint and think and take care of yourself for the work that you're doing.
Like you're getting a lot of love, Ashley.
Such an important question. And thank you, Ashley, for that really important story. Appreciate you so much, what you're doing. And, you know, because of my mixed blood heritage, I often don't look like, you know, a person of color quite in the same way. And yet, as a woman with Native heritage and very proud and very out with my Native heritage, I have received, you know, a lot of that disregarding and disrespect. And especially, as you know, all you wonderful women in science, you know, brown women in science, like, right? It's an uphill battle to this day. And I'm so proud of all of you, and so honored to be in this, you know, work together, because it's still a struggle. The Western sciences, you know, are still dominated by white male privilege. And that's changing. We're changing it as we speak, right? But that means that there's still a lot of disrespect and disregard and certain arrogance of assuming that position is right. So I've really had to get into my own strength, my own confidence, to really speak up and challenge that power. And that's really awkward, and it takes time. And you know, you threaten losing grants and partners and jobs and opportunities. But, you know, it's so important to speak up and to call out that racism or that sexism when it shows up and rears its ugly head. So it's an ongoing battle. I don't see it ending anytime soon, unfortunately. But I think as more awesome Native women and women of color like yourselves enter the field of science and the workforce, we are turning the tide. We are turning the tide. I think our vice president now may help too. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Just being here gives me a lot of courage to continue with the work that we have to do, to have not just representation, but to feel whole in the spaces where we work. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had is not feeling enough. Not feeling, for example, even in the spaces where there were a lot of people of color like SACNAS. So SACNAS's mission is to really encourage Latinos and Native Americans to pursue PhDs in sciences to the highest degree. And as a nonprofit manager, I felt like I needed to have a PhD in order to do this. So I was invited even twice to be an executive director, but I always told them, you know, I really think somebody with a PhD needs to be doing this. And I still think that, but there is something in me that has to do with, again, not feeling like I am enough. And that's something that I've told myself in 2021, I'm really working on really feeling am believing and really working towards feeling like any space that I'm in, I'm enough. Yes, I have things to learn, but right now I'm enough to be able to call out my own colleagues to say, you know what, Life Lab, which is a beautiful space, is still has a power structure where the white men are the ones that have the longest tenure and the one that has the most information, and to be able to feel like, yeah, I'm enough to be able to speak up. I'm enough to be able to, and to join my colleagues in this beautiful dance of learning and transforming. Because what I want to do is I want to feel enough so that I can help transform that within me, so that I can help transform that within my own specific, work environment, but that have ripple effects in education, that have ripple effects in health, that have ripple effects in society. And so really feeling both in the body and the mind and in the heart that each one of us is enough to be in the spaces that we're at, to make change within.
I have to say that I've been rather privileged in the fact that the jobs that I've held down have been led by powerful Native women. So Dr. Hernandez was my boss 2-3 years ago when I was working at the American Indian Resource Center. And now that I am working on a school on the reservation, I have a powerful Native woman as my principal. So I have been very fortunate in that way. Both of them have encouraged me to embrace my Native identity and my background as a scientist, which is fortunate. But I will say that as an educator, anytime I step away from my school specifically, and I'm in a more broad educator setting, educators are 85% white women, more in rural areas like South Dakota. So closer to 90% of educators are white women. So anytime I'm away from my school, I'm in a space that is predominantly white women. And a lot of the time, they like to discredit indigenous knowledges of science because it's not Western science. It's not hard science, even though Western science is now catching up to indigenous understandings that we've had for 500 to 10,000 years. Anyway, side note. That has been a really difficult thing to grapple with when I've been in spaces. So as a new educator, a lot of the time we do have to do statewide training programs where I'm surrounded by a lot of white folks. And anytime I bring up teaching about blood quantum, they're like, what is that? I also live in a border town, which South Dakota is known for having very problematic border towns. I live right outside the reservation and it is a very white location. And there are a lot of stigmas about what it's like on the reservation. So I have had to confront that head on. And as an educator, I feel it's my job to correct white folks when they're like, oh, you all get free tuition. No, I have student loans too. And that's a daily thing. And that's something that my students have to deal with. And I feel that it's my job to stand up against that in some way. I also think that I've, as of late, we've had a hierarchy shift at my school. And I've noticed that as a woman, I've been under a lot more micromanagement from the higher ups, not my principal, mind you, but higher than my principal, that none of my male colleagues are getting. And I am the department head for the science department at my school, and I am still being micromanaged more than other folks in the science department because I'm the only woman. And this is something that's not uncommon for women in science, is to have all the qualifications that you need and yet still be looked at side-eyed or micromanaged just because of the way we present. So I think education in itself has a whole tier of problems that come with it as a person of color going into that workforce, and a whole other tier being a woman in science. So I have been fortunate that I've managed to get some of the most amazing leaders to be directly over top of me and shielding me from some of the bureaucracy, but it's unfortunately inescapable. So that's a reality I think all of the other speakers were also echoing, is that while we will surround ourselves with people that we know will have our backs, we're always going to be fighting back against the higher beings that being white supremacy, if we want to put it in simple terms.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think we could all use a lot of validation and speaking out against things that are really violent towards people of color in our bodies, especially as women. And yeah, and I know it's difficult to talk about those things, but they happen. We experience them. And for our last question, we have about 5 minutes left before we wrap up. And what projects are you especially proud of?
Okay, I'll get us going because it's all that. Oh, who do you want to go with it? Okay, I'll just, and forgive me if I just go on and on. I'm going to try and keep it brief. Through the Cultural Conservancy, the nonprofit organization I've been honored to serve for nearly 30 years, over half my life. We've always supported Native land rights issues for other communities, tribes, indigenous groups, and we were always small and more of a service oriented in terms of just, building strengths and working to empower the communities who wanted their own relationship to the land. Long story short, we were offered a piece of land, an 8-acre farm in Sonoma County. And I talked to my board and our elders and advisors, and they said, let's go for this. And we didn't know if it was a donation or if we have to purchase it, and it literally took 5 years of negotiating. And we finally were able to acquire it, purchase it half price, and get the blessings of the sovereign nation, the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria. And we actually said, you guys should take the land. And they said, no, we want you to. You'll be a great partner. And now we're creating this large-scale indigenous farm, eco-village, place for cultural arts. And yes, I can't wait to collaborate with many of you on it. Have a little sister farm, ethnobotanical. We already have Edward Willie, a wonderful Wailaki Pomo native land caretaker as the land manager. And anyway, I'm so proud of it. Took so much time. I had to raise $1 million literally to buy it. And now I have a staff, an all native staff, young staff who are just doing amazing work there. And I'm still, of course, involved with designing and fundraising, but it's really an incredible vision and team that we're all birthing, and you'll all be welcome there soon, post-COVID. So I'm very proud of that one. Thank you.
How exciting. I am, of course, my mind is just percolating with, desire to want to connect, because I think there's many opportunities. I think our paths are leading to connect at a good moment.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Yes. I'm inspired to actually just go to the present, but I wanted to share with all of you something that I'm really proud of, and that is similar to Melissa. I had the great fortune of participating with an organization, SACNAS. Again, you'll hear SACNAS over and over again, because I really grew up with SACNAS. It was a 20-year, really beautiful relationship. And I had the great pleasure of going from an organization that was about 250 people to a conference last year in Hawaii that was 5,000 people. And SACNAS became a movement to itself. It goes beyond just any one of us. So to be part of that momentum of growth and connection and possibility of transforming universities that then lead to transforming education and opportunities for more people, for me, it was very, very gratifying. And I was really, really honored to have Cesar Chavez's granddaughter back in 2011. She actually nominated me for an award at the White House. And more than the actual award, because that was a collective effort, it was the fact that all the little paths of, having a grandchild from Cesar Chavez, who my father, who was a farm worker, got to meet. Now, for all of us to be connecting at the White House, I was like, wow. And similarly, I think that there are these beautiful opportunities that are going to unfold with the new administration that allow us to be able to dream even more. I think that that's really, my sense of accomplishment is that it actually is possible, that change is possible, that transformation, that land, education, that we can actually contribute to bigger systems that are in place that will actually outlive us. That, I think, is just beautiful, and I'm grateful for those opportunities.
Mm.
I can go ahead and go. I think that's amazing what you both just shared. One of my projects I guess I'm most proud of was being able to lobby for AB 901, which would reduce the contact that youth have with probation officers. And so it was just the decriminalization of young youth of color, especially youth of color. And it was actually signed last September by Governor Newsom. So I was really happy when that was passed, because, the work that we're doing is really to stop having police on campuses and provide students with the resources that they need in order to really succeed and to really embrace the culture that they come from. So I was just so excited because it was my first time lobbying. I didn't know what to expect. And then just having just amazing partners there and with me, being able to share experiences that our youth had shared with us was really great. So definitely that. And then also just being able to advocate for the Lotus Puerto Day, which is April 10th. And it was signed by Governor Brown in 2018. So definitely collaborating with different educators to create a curriculum and teach for teachers to be able to showcase this type of activists that has continued and is continuing to create change and fight for social justice through grassroots organizing. So really proud to be working on that and developing more curriculum because we still have a lot of districts to go to really adopt these policies and resolutions to celebrate the life. A lot of students here in Central Valley don't even know about how much significance Delano has. So really bringing that pride and joy to those students that may need that knowledge and really be proud of where they come from. So that's definitely one of my favorite projects that I'm gonna continue working on, but so happy to be working where I am. So just glad to be continuing to learn.
You all are so inspirational. I'm so grateful to get to share space with you. Goodness gracious. So I guess projects, I think sometimes like classroom projects, because I'm a teacher, woo. So one of my favorite things that I've wanted to do in my classroom is to have like critical conversations with my students about identity and like race and whether that's a social construct or a scientific fact kind of thing. So last year I got to spend like 2 weeks doing a project on blood quantum and what it actually means. So my students did like a family tree and they went and talked to their relatives about like what oyates or like what family groupings they're from. They wrote a paper about whether or not they thought their tribes should still do blood quantums and what that could mean for like the future generations coming. And that's one thing I'm really proud of because it's critical thought. And these are the youth that are going to decide these things in the future. And I got to facilitate that in my classroom. Like I didn't have these critical conversations until I was in college. So I'm really proud that I got to be able to do that. And I'm really grateful that I had an administrator that let me do this, because if I was probably anywhere else in the country, I probably wouldn't have been able to get by with that. And then the second thing I'm really proud of is I got funding for a community garden at the school. So once COVID hit, I think it exacerbated so many issues that were already present on the reservation. We saw like access to food was really hard because the reservation is about 30 miles from the nearest town, which is where I live. So access to food for our kids was a real issue. We had to keep the kitchen going at the school just to make sure our students had food to eat. And having seen that firsthand, and like obviously IHS doesn't have capacity to take care of our sick people. So knowing that and seeing it firsthand, I felt really impassioned about making sure that our students had access to food. So I worked with my principal at my school, and we worked with like across the district how to find a plot of land to put this on, and like planned out what kind of foods. We talked to elders about traditional food ways and like traditional medicines that we could bring and put on the land. And the hardest part was getting the actual money to do this. Like theoretically it's great, but actually enacting it is the hard part. And then, you know, COVID. So we got the funding for it. We haven't put it in yet, but we're working with our tribal elders to figure out what foods, like what we should grow next to each other and everything. So I'm really, really proud of that and excited for what that's going to mean for the community, and excited to see like students going out and getting to work in the garden and getting school credit for it, because that's what our kids need to be doing, is learning about the food that they need and learning about the traditions of their people. So I'm stoked that I got to play any part in facilitating that.
Wow, a very special thank you to all of our speakers. That was extremely inspirational, and I feel lucky to be in the same share the space with you all. If you're interested in speaking with someone about your future career, please contact Christina Hall, a career coach at the Career Success Center. They're super happy to help you.
You can also contact Taylor, who is with us in the audience today. Taylor, if you'd like to say a quick spiel.
Oh, no worries. Just if you do need any support or help, feel free to email me and or Christina Hall in the space, and we're happy to help you in any way possible. And I'll throw my email into the chat, as well as we are having a public service and helping professions fair tomorrow. There will be 22 government, nonprofit organizations or education at the space. So if you are interested in that, I will also throw that in the chat as well. So thank you very much.
And if you would like to get in touch with any of our speakers, please feel free to contact Rosa Kinner, Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement and Outreach Programs. And
yeah, so yes, just thank you everyone for being here today. We'd like to take just a few minutes to talk about our evaluation form, which will be posted in the chat. We ask this information from you because it helps us gather data that we can use to plan future events for all of y'all. So UCSD students who complete an evaluation form and enter their name and email address will also be entered into a raffle to win an iPad. So don't miss out on that opportunity. And really quickly, we'd also like to announce our upcoming event, Mind, Body, and Spirit. This will be a 3-part speaker series focusing on Native understandings of health and the connection between body, mind, and spirit. Our speakers will include American Indian healthcare workers and psychologists who are working directly with American Indian populations. And then the Spirit event will be a presentation by the interns on the AIRC team. All the events will take place on Zoom on Fridays from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, and we will also be posting that link to register in the chat. We hope to see you there.
on behalf of UCSC Career Success and the American Indian Resource Center, thank you again for being with us today. If you'd like to know anything more about our future events, Please sign up for our newsletter. Thank you and have a nice day.